Welcome to this week's rant, and it's not the morning, it's actually late afternoon because it's just started raining, and I'm doing it in the workshop again because it's probably the most tidy place. But this week's rant is entitled "Help, I Need an Expert," but we'll come on to that in a minute. But before we get on to that particular subject, I thought we'd do this week's Behringer Roundup. Or Behringer Roundup. I really can't get my head round. It's Behringer. But I brought my iPad in because I've got a load of photographs stored on my iPad, and I thought it was just easier for me to talk about what was on the iPad. The first thing to recognise is Behringer have gone into utter overdrive. They seem to be announcing new products and new R&D activities on almost a weekly, if not daily basis. There is a lot of stuff coming from this particular company through one of its divisions, and as if you know that Music Tribes is kind of, I think, the holding company. Behringer is a sub. And there are a number of other subs within that company structure. And as I say, they've gone into complete overdrive. Now, the things that really interest me about this overdrive situation is, again, they have posted another update on the DS80, which is something I'm really, really looking forward to seeing when it eventually makes landfall. It's one of the other things they've said is probably 2 years away. So it's going to be 2 years before we can get our hands on one of these devices. But the other thing they've said is that they have now mapped the filter tables, filter system, filters in general of the CS80 to the DS80. And they put graphs on the Facebook page that actually show you the original CS80 responses and their mapped responses. I've got to be honest and say the CS80 does excite me. It excites me, I think I've said it before, because it was the keyboard one of the keyboards used by the guys from Toto when they were writing the Toto 4 album and some of Michael Jackson's Thriller. So a lot of that was kind of written on the CS80. They also used the Jupiter 8. That was written. Some of that, especially Thriller, was done on the Jupiter 8. But a lot of the work that these guys did, and they basically did a lot of the work on that Thriller album was done by the guys from Toto. If you didn't know that, Dave Piach and Steve Luther and Jeff Porcaro, they all, I think it's Jeff Porcaro, isn't it? They all did quite a lot of work playing session for Quincy Jones. So that excites me because I can never afford to buy an original CS80, but a reimagined version I probably would be up for. The other thing that I saw this week, let me just find it, was there was a piece of news that Behringer have bought some land in Malaysia, and they are basically going to build a brand new factory there. And that factory is obviously going to be to support all the new product that they are starting to announce. So that factory will probably come on stream, I suspect, within 2 years, given how long it takes to break ground and build things. But the fact that they've announced they're building a new factory means that they have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. The next thing, and this is why I say it's kind of like the Behringer Roundup, is the fact that they have now announced a couple of things relating to drum and bass, I suppose. One is they've announced something called the TD3MO, which stands for Modded Out. So this is a new version of their reimagined TB303, and as far as I can tell, it has a bunch of other stuff that's been put onto it that keeps faith with the iconic synthesizer, but allows you to do slightly more. So it is. It does look different. It's got a lot of different things in terms of the interface. The basic interface looks the same. I will put pictures up for this stuff. But there's other stuff, and I haven't really dealt into why should you buy one over the other. And the second thing they've done this week, or definitely in the last week, is they've announced the RD8 Mark II. And I have no idea what is the difference between the RD8 Mark I and Mark II. But I'm a little bit miffed about that because I've got an RD8 and I love my RD8, and all of a sudden they've introduced the Mark II. What's the difference? I will do a video and explain the difference between the two of them, whether it's worth buying a Mark I or a Mark II. In the UK, the difference between the two is around about £50. So, there's that. And then the other one that I was quite excited about is the fact, and I really didn't put this on my radar, and I should have put this on my radar, but they've noted that the firmware for their reimagined version of the PPG Wave is complete. Now, the next step is to produce 50 pre-production models of this imagined clone, or this clone that they have imagined, or reimagined, should I say. And I looked at the photographs of this, and it looks very, very faithful, again, to the original PPG Wave. And I've got to be brutally honest and say, I know nothing about this synthesizer. I know many people have commented on the PPG Wave synth in the past, and some of the iconic early 80s pop music that was done on this particular synthesizer. And I also know that the way the waves are generated is not is different. Is that they have a different way of generating waves, much the same as these guys started doing their trans wave generation in their synthesizers. The PPG Wave, I believe, was very, very similar. It adopted a slightly different take on how to generate the synthesis. And I've got to be honest, I'm honestly saying I know very little about this synth, but it's come across. I am quite interested in what it can do, and maybe it's something for the bucket list. I don't know. I have to see where Behringer come in with the price point. But the fact that they are now at 50 pre-production models being produced probably means that we're somewhere between 6 and 9 months away from a launch. So that's the UBXA at some point this year, the PPG Wave at some point next year, and it looks like the DS80 is going to be the big one for the year after. Irrelevant all the other drum machines, the LM drum, the RD9 that's now shipping. So it's very, very interesting. The other thing that they're doing is they seem to have gone very big into Eurorack. Again, it's an area I know very little about, Eurorack. I just don't have the time to spend my days constructing synthesis and sound using banana cables. And for those of you, when I say a banana cable, what I'm talking about is a cable that has another slot on it, so you can basically plug it into a jack and then take two cables out of the same jack. We always used to call them banana cables. I don't know whether the industry still calls them banana cables, but I still know them as banana cables. So that's kind of it just is. They are a company that are really flooding the market with product, and they don't seem to be holding back on delivering product to market. There are many people who comment out there about the Behringer business practices. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying it's quite an exciting time. You can't buy these legacy, legendary pieces of tech. Well, you can, but you won't. You know, your bank account is going to be very much lighter if you do. So, you know, I applaud them for looking at what people are asking for and delivering product. I'm not going to get into the ethics of it, but that's just a lot of product news in 1 week from one company. I'm not sure I'm seeing the same amount of activity with the other companies at the moment. Okay, this is the part of the video where we do the channel self-promotion. Feel free to whiz past it, but we must do this. It's important to promote the channel. So if you see this channel and you've seen it for the first time and you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe icon, hit the bell icon. You'll be notified when new content hits the channel. If you like the content of the video, give it a thumbs up. It's really appreciated. But more than that, please leave comments down below. I love reading your comments about the subjects covered in the videos, and I respond to them, and sometimes you guys give me the ideas for future video content. So please, if you watch this video, put a comment down below, but be constructive. Also down there are the Facebook and Instagram feeds. DM me over there, follow me on those channels. That's where you're probably likely to get a more instant response from me, because it's the channel in my pocket, and also it's where all the general daily shenanigans of the channel get posted. And finally, and probably most importantly, down there is the TMTG community. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can keep this channel rocking and rolling, doing what it does and improving what it does. There are some improvements coming. I can't tell you about them, but there are some fairly major projects coming along soon. I say soon, within the next 6 months. Anyway, back to this video. Okay, this is the part of the video where I really am asking for help from you, the community viewers. As you know, one of the things I do is I never ever use, or I try not to use, original discs. So when I acquire discs for various platforms, what I do is I effectively create an image of those discs, and then I put the original discs into boxes and into storage, so I don't have to use them. I have the images. The images are stored on a network drive, actually in the cloud, so I can always get to my images wherever I am when I need them, if I need to cut new discs. And the reason for that is because these things, especially the 720 versions, which is what this is what they call a double-sided double density disc, are becoming quite scarce, and they're becoming quite old, and depending on what sort of life they've had before I managed to acquire them, they may last me for 20 years, they may last me for 5 minutes. Okay, and I've had this literally disintegrate on me when I've been trying to just copy stuff because of the life they've had before I've acquired them. So that's my ethos. I will try not to use original discs. However, I have found that the Yamaha TX16W is actually flummoxing me, and I'll explain why. So some time back, I acquired a disc library. In fact, I've acquired a fairly sizable Yamaha 16W disc library. Okay, these are the original, and I have a lot of these. And I have the R&D series rock, I have the R&D series orchestral, most of the sound library. I've got only missing a couple of discs from the sound library. But these were all given to me, okay, some time back. And I have tried and tried and tried with some of this stuff to create images for the TX16W. Now, I have been on the user groups, I have trawled around the internet for many evenings trying to find information. I've probably got myself quite a long way down the line. For example, the format that Yamaha uses is almost a DOS format. And I say almost a DOS format because what it does some fairly funky stuff with sector 0 on both sides of the disc, and it writes funny characters to byte number 7. Okay, that's a bit technical, but I understand that. Now, I'm not a disc whiz, so I found a thread on a website that was talking about a utility that would reset one of these discs. And apparently, if you put one of these discs into certain versions of Windows, Windows will FooBarred the disc for you. And it FooBars the disc effectively by writing stuff into the sector 0 that the TX16W wants as empty. Okay, so it's part of the copyright mechanism that the TX16W does. It does this weird stuff. So we go on to the disc library, and this I know is a FooBarred disc. Okay, if I put this in the TX16W, this will come back and say FC disc format. All right, which basically means it can't read the disc because there's something wrong with it. Now, when I acquired this library, one of the things I did notice on many of the discs is that little tab at the back, which is you either have it up like so you can see clear air through, daylight through that hole. That means it's protected, and if it's down like that, it means somebody can write to it. Okay, I can read this in my PC, but the TX16W won't read it. It says there is a problem with it. If I look at this disc, it has all the right sounds or all the right files on it, or as far as I can see, it's all the right files for what this disc is pertaining to be, which is vibraphone 1. Okay, so I seem to have a disc that seems to have the correct things on it, but I can't read it on the TX16W. And I don't know what I've got to do to that disc to make it read. Now, as I said, I found something that said there was a utility some time ago that unFooBarred a disc that Microsoft Windows might have FooBarred. The other thing I've learned from my working with the TX16W is if I've got a disc like this that works, then I can create a copy of that disc, and I do that by effectively formatting one of these in the 16W. It's a laborious process, and then once I've formatted it, I can effectively tell the 16W to copy the files from one disc to another. Okay, it's not my usual mechanism for doing this because my usual mechanism for doing this fails, and it's to do with this Microsoft FooBarring of the disc. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. So what I'm really looking for is somebody who is a TX16W expert to tell me what is the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle that I'm finding. As I say, there are images of these discs online, and I think I've got probably most of the images. I can format a disc in the 16W. I can read the disc in my XP machine. I can copy the image files from the image onto the disc in my XP machine, but the 16W won't read it. I can read the files on one of these discs on my XP machine. I can copy those files from that disc to a disc that's been formatted in the 16W, but the 16W won't find those files. I can take an image of a working disc that I know works on the 16W. I can image that. I can copy it down to one of these discs. I can either format it and then write the image, or I can format it in the 16W and write the image. The 16W doesn't like it. So, I'm sitting there thinking maybe it's something wrong with the disk drive. But then if it was something wrong with the disk drive, I wouldn't be able to format, copy files onto it and read them back on the 16W. that it wouldn't allow me to do that. So I'm kind of snookered because I don't want to use the original disc. I really don't want to be in that situation because these discs will have a finite life to them. I want to be able to use the copied files on the 16W. So as I said, my policy is normally that I will create a copy for myself, and I will use the copy of the disc rather than using the original disc, because that way it protects the original disc, as I said before. But I thought I had this sussed, and I thought I had it sussed a couple of years ago, and I found out actually only within the last few weeks when I've been playing the 16W that I hadn't got it sussed. My notes, when I went back and read my notes about what I was doing, I realised that I got to a certain point with the 16W discs, and then for one reason or another I stopped doing stuff on the 16W, probably because I was doing something else or going to court, or it was probably around about the time that I was going to court that I was playing around with the 16W seriously. And that's to get divorced, by the way, guys. So it was a long and lengthy process. But yeah, so at that point I would have been, busy doing other stuff. So my notes are incomplete, whereas I thought I'd gone all the way. And normally I persevere with this stuff until I've cracked the sequence of what I need to do. But I haven't. And everything I read on the internet, I get so far. And what a lot of guys who know about the 16W on the internet have said is it's a DOS 720 disc. You can read it, you can copy the files onto it, and then it should work. But it's not. And I don't know what I'm missing. I really don't know what part of this process I'm struggling with. I've copied an image from a location that a user group has pointed me to, and I've copied that image down. As I said, the problem is the instructions are missing something that I'm missing, and I can't work out what it is. So this is a genuine plea to the community. If you have had a 16W and you know how to get a set of images onto a set of genuine 720 discs, and I know these are genuine, I know these will work, okay, because I can use these and I can format them and I can copy a working disc onto it. I've got no problem with that. So I know that the 16W is working. I just can't work this out. It's driving me bonkers. So if anybody out there can help me, please drop me either over on Facebook or Instagram, drop me a line, email me. The address is obviously, you can pick that up off the channel, or drop comments on against the video, and let me know what I'm doing wrong. Put me out of my misery, please, because this is driving me potty. I am trying to put these discs into storage, and I can't put them into storage until I know they work, and I've got a copy of the image here for me to work with. So and on that plea for help and that ramble, I'm going to say live long and prosper, and I will see you guys next week. Bye bye.